There you are. I want you to have. We're in the middle of a breakfast. You had the crush on Rosemary, but I had the crush on you. Thank you, Jill. Let me take a cup on Jesus. Rosemary left. How many other strangers? Smile! Stop talking and smile! Hurry up and take it! How many strange men came in and felt your legs? Yeah. Didn't you tell me? I'll remember.
So, how are you doing? What are you doing?
Well,
Where are you teaching? Journalism, I assume?
I was head of the department.
I heard that, I knew that, and they went over
And then I
there.
came back and passed my things. You have to come because I could do free. Are you sitting here? Hello. All right.
Folks, we're going to begin our service for Theresa. So we ask for silence as our musicians begin the service with a musical selection.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly, and I'm very honored today that Rosemary and family have asked me to be here for this celebration of life. I'll be singing basically solo, but if you know anything that I'm singing and you really feel moved to sing along, please don't hesitate. And we're going to begin this morning with How Great Thou Art. Oh Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the roar
don't be afraid, it's in giant type because I'm old. Okay. So long, Mom. We're going to miss you. In fact, we already do. In a family of remarkable longevity, you were never afraid of death, and yours is not an unhappy passing. Many a time in the last couple of years, I heard you say that you were ready any time. You'd had a good life, you were content. Still, could you not have held on 2 months more? In my basement right now, I have this gigantic long sign that says Happy 100th Birthday. We inherited it from Aunt Ro, who made it to 102, and now who in the hell am I going to give that to? A few years ago, a new guy moved into the house next door, the George house, and Mom said, oh, is he my age? And I go, no, Mother, no one is your age. She outlived, my mother outlived. She hated when we called her she in her present soul. You outlived a sibling, a husband, all of your friends, and the Georges, those beloved next door neighbors. You wondered if you'd see your mother again. You missed her still, and I certainly know that feeling today. I bet you guys do too. You are leaving behind, Mother, a family that is raised very much in your image, although oddly, you never saw that. You used to write me letters in college and sign off with, I love you very much, even though you're a maverick. Your refrain used to be, we all heard this, I raised 5 daughters, and none of them is a bit like me. It's not true. We are all like you in some ways, and that is because you were a role model. You are a woman ahead of your time. You went to work when you still had kids at home. That was unheard of. You turned a temporary typing job into a career that lasted until these new young idiot bosses came in and began to torment you. And what did you do then? You quit and you just took another state job at your age. You kept track of the finances of our family. You spent the money you earned on what you wanted, which was an above-ground pool in the backyard. You took vacations separately from our stay-at-home father. Unheard of. And as an adult, you got yourself driving lessons. And you learned to drive. Okay, not well. She was never a good driver. She led her entire life without parallel parking or making left-hand turns. That's true. But with the car, with the driving lessons, she broke free of all restraints. You hated being told what to do. Your daughters recognize that. When that pool you bought wore out a couple decades later, I remember my dad at some gathering or another saying, yeah, we're not going to get another one, we're not going to replace it. And I don't think you thought it was a bad idea. By that time, we were all grown up or out of the house. By hearing my father say that, the next day she went out and bought another one. And it's still in the backyard 30 years later. We all have used it. Many of you in the neighborhood have too. And you claimed always to be shy, but look at this place, Mother. You were a social butterfly. The people here are soon going to see that your daughters learned from you your mantra about parties. If you want to throw a good party, you have to spend money. And we have, open bar and everything. You'd be proud. So here was the routine of me and most of my cousins growing up and my sisters. Whiskey sours with Babs, Doc, and the Nennies. Wild, loud badminton games in the backyard. And even louder, wilder card games in our dining room with the Scaringes. Holiday picnics, trips Brown's Beach. That was it. We did that year after year for many years. And then in retirement, you all took your parties on the road. Hawaii, Vegas, Savannah, mostly with the seniors, which was the Citizen Center of Colony, but always with Babs and Aunt Ro. You insisted that your daughters drive the second we turned 16. And going to college was not even something we ever discussed. It was just always accepted that, of course, we were going to go, because the one regret you did have in your life, and we heard this repeatedly, was that you did not take up your father's offer to send you to college. She was not going to make that mistake with us. So, yeah, Mom, you see, you were a role model. And we sisters took in every one of these lessons very well. We learned about independence, standing up for what we wanted, having a life outside the home, having fun, how to pursue swayed the men in our lives, and what we wanted was what they really wanted to. We learned these lessons, much to the regret of husbands, ex-husbands, and a bunch of sons who have spent their entire lives in the domain of very strong women. The house, I have to tell you, feels really empty without your mom. 173 Sand Creek Road had an almost magical hold on you from the instant that you saw it. Back in 1954, you were living with 3 children under the age of 5 in a tiny upstairs apartment in Troy. The roof leaked, the ceilings leaked, there were rats. So before long, you had Dad out with a real estate agent looking for houses. And you spent a whole day, very disappointing, nothing worked, nothing was good, it was all lousy. And the agent kind of despairingly said, well, you know, there is one more place. I don't know, it's kind of in rough shape. Well, you knew, the minute you saw it, that was the place you were going to spend your life, that big, shabby White House in the middle of nowhere. And you talked Dad into it, of course, strong woman that you were. Although later that night, and the first night you moved in, he stood outside looking at this wild expanse of scrub woods in the back and empty farm fields all around and said, what the hell have we done? And after that, you spent the next 71 years decorating, changing, and always, always cleaning that damn house. The George girls' most vivid memory of you, Mom, is you standing up on a ladder outside with a newspaper and Windex, cleaning the windows. You rearranged the furniture so often that Dad used to say, it's a good thing no blind people live here. And he would say that while rubbing yet another bruised shin. So my hope, Mom, is that you're going to continue to haunt that place you love so much. Also, I'm hoping that ghosts know how to use a dust rag and a mop. You left us with other gifts that we have to thank you for. You turned us all, and that's right down through the generations, into readers. You were like a pusher, but of books, not of drugs. Do you remember those Bible stories that you used to read to us? We all would be seated around the dining room table. Mom would be smoking. Remember the click of her teeth as she was reading to us? That was grooming. In drug language, that's grooming. None of us, when I checked, have actual memories of ever seeing you with the book. When did you have the time? In between the cleaning and the diaper changing and the work in the house and cooking. We figured that it must have been late at night or in the bus, either going into or coming back from work. We don't ever remember you watching TV. I know I don't remember her until she was well into her 70s when suddenly she discovered Andy Griffith and Mary Tyler Moore and became a TV addict. But she didn't watch TV before, she must have been reading. And in that way, she became a verifiable expert on both World War II and the sinking of the Titanic. Relentlessly, you pushed your product, which was your favorite books, on us. The Caine Mutiny, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Of Mice and Men, War and Remembrance, Gone with the Wind, but especially Pride and Prejudice, which even until last year, you could recite parts of verbatim, the proposal scene, absolutely. You recorded some of these books on tapes to encourage your son-in-laws to also read. We, your daughters, knew every bookstore, old bookstores, and every library in the Capital District because we've been there with you. And you know, I still have among my papers the outline that you wrote for a sequel to Gone with the Wind, not that trashy thing that Alexandria Ripley came out with. You had an outline, and you were trying to encourage me to write it. You said you'd be my technical advisor. It might be my retirement project, I'm not sure. To some of the I have to retire from this. To some of the sisters, I'm not one of them, but to some of the sisters, you bequeath this keen sense of style and fashion. Again, you never saw it, but you really were a hottie. Our cousins have told us how as kids, they would see you always in high heels and in those Kirchner coats with the big furry collars and the belt, and you'd be on the arm of our very handsome father, and they would think they were seeing Hollywood in West Albany. You were movie stars. Well into your 90s, you were still posing proudly in shorts, showing off those little trim legs, right? You've seen them. And you never wore your glasses, even though you badly needed them because, well, you know, girls with glasses. You never dyed your hair. That always pissed me off. It just stayed dark and thick until the end of her life. You would have laughed at us, Mother, over the past week, seeing us pawing through your drawers, and your closets looking for treasures. This is one. I think you can still see the hanger marks on it here. I also did not get from you, although how I wish I did, this perfectionist streak you had. You were literally an artist with a typewriter. Before computers or spell check or spreadsheets, with only an IBM selector, you could draw up a table with 10 rows across, 20 rows down, fill each of those boxes with data, and then add in the actual printed lines. And you never misspelled a word that I know of, went outside a margin, or dropped a comma. You typed my ex-husband's long and indecipherable PhD theses. You typed my work colleagues' freelance pieces, and all of our high school papers. And that may have had a lot to do with how we ended up with the grades we did, including 2 valedictorians among us, Kate and Christine, because legible typing, not handwritten scrawling, could be expected from the Armao girls. It made us seem smarter than we actually were. And then you mastered a computer too, and you taught yourself those card programs. For years, you kept a list of all of my family and friends, and you printed out and mailed them customized cards on the right date. You put the stamps on them. You badgered me to give you more gossipy updates about my friends so that she could better personalize the cards. And these folksy homemade cards made the Armao girls seem more friendly than they really were actually too. Many of the people here in this room remember, and you saved copies of the family newsletter that you put together, Mom, for years. She collected the photos and stories about family events, edited, collated, typed proof. She spent hours over the copy machines at UPS. I used to drive her, I know. You raised 2 journalists, Mom, but you wrote as well as we did. You knew the craft as well as we did. And you were so damn organized and neat. Plus, you did all this in the basement of the house, not in some fancy newsroom. Admit it, Mom, you were just multi-talented. You could turn a string of yarn into these lacy works of art that your kids and grandkids still decorate their houses and dresses with, their tables and dresses with. And you could recite, amazingly, the names of all the presidents, up to about like Carter, in order, from the first to the last, and then also from the last to the first. Try that. Then you had this like a Rain Man ability to recall the birth dates and the death date of every member of the family, every friend we had, and we would quiz you on this. We'd hold up the holy cards like the one we're passing out today and say, okay, when did Aunt Tess die? What year did Uncle Paul go? And she knew them all. She also was a whiz, I might add, at Trivial Pursuit, and I am going to miss those games. One indelible memory that many of us will have was a time that out of nowhere, where did you pull this down from? You answered the wrestling question, won a wedge, and the damn game in Trivial Pursuit. That precipitated an actual physical family fight, and I know I remember landing in a plane. I realize that I'm going on and on, but you have to give me a break, guys, because I'm trying to compress 99 years into one little speech. Do you see what I just did there? That's attitude. We have to talk about attitude. Our friends, some of our friends, jokingly would call Mom Mother Theresa, but you were never saint like Mother. Like I said, she taught us to fight for our rights. One Christmas, as she tells the story, Sister Joanne decided after a couple of tries that she did not like the hot rollers Mom had gotten her as a present. So the 2 of them went back over to Sears to get a refund. And Mom boldly told the clerk, yeah, these rollers have not been used, they were a Christmas present. And he counters with, well then what are these hairs doing up? And my mother, without missing a beat, said, sir, I do not know what condition you sell your merchandise in, but that's your problem and not mine. And they walked out with the money. Whenever I got upset by an unkind comment or a letter from a reader or a radio listener, my well-bred mother, dear, would recite the poet Charles Mackay to me. And his quote was, he hath no friends who hath no enemies. Isn't that a much classier way to say F you? And that was a word my mother drilled into us that she hated. And I know, Mom, that we're going to think of you every time in the future that we use that word. Oh, we have lots of attitude stories. I think my favorite is another one from Joanne. Remember, you and Mom were in New York City, and you went to the old Algonquin Hotel and ordered drinks for cocktails. And Mom wanted a Long Island iced tea. And this supercilious little waiter, you know how they are in New York City, sneers, "Madam, we only serve alcoholic drinks here." And again, undaunted by this, Mom said to him, "I suggest, sir, that you go consult with your bartender on what goes into a Long Island tea." And a few minutes later, he came back, head down sheepishly, with a drink that has 5 kinds of liquors in it. My mother knew her liquor. I know you are so going to haunt us. I already know that, although you haven't gotten to the kitchen floor yet, that could use it. Every time I see a woman in a black and white outfit, including accessories and shoes, I'm going to think of my mother. Percolating coffee is going to do it. Kleenex at the bottom of a pocket, that's Mom. Buds on trees in spring, she hated winter so much. Notice how she checked out before this winter? That was on purpose, I think. But that's all going to say Theresa to us. Sparkling windows, of course, are going to do it. And Venetian blinds, which you considered a curse from the devil. Dear Abby, and the super quiz in the newspaper in the morning. Bookshelves. Even the pronoun she is going to remind me of you, Mom. Way, way ahead of her time. My mother objected to the use of offensive pronouns. We could not speak about her in the third person. Remember that? No, she for me. She was way ahead of her time. Thank you notes are going to do it too. Every one of those notes is going to be stamped for me with TSA, and I don't mean the awful airport Nazis, I mean your initials. Mom, you were stickler, always a pain in the neck about thank you cards. So just for the record, I did check, and we actually have 1 year to acknowledge the donations of flowers you've sent. 1 year, Mother, eat that. 99 years. You are going out, Mom, as the matriarch of the Scaringe family and of the Stellato branch of the family tree, and with you, Old West Albany, which some of us are old enough to remember. That village is fading ever more steadily into dim history. This is really the end of an era. 99 years. I wish you didn't have to go so soon, Mom. Aside from losing this past, we are losing the best roommate, the best travel buddy, sorry, Holly, and the best confidant that we ever had. That damn dementia. Alzheimer's is a curse on this family, and a drain, Mom. Although again, even here, you were a role model. You were the dutiful daughter. You stayed with Grandma as she headed towards 101. You cleaned her house instead of your own. You sat blankly in front of her TV watching her stories when you would rather have been out swimming in your pool. And while I can't say that you never complained about all this, you complained about everything, Grandma did credit you with her happy time, her happy ending, at home on her own terms. And I used to love how much it annoyed her when people would say to me, "Oh, what a great daughter you are. You're staying with your mother?" And she would say, "Where are the people saying, 'Oh, what a great mother you are. You're putting up with that daughter?'" She was right. She was right. It was a privilege taking care of you, even the hard parts, like when your memory began fading and you would ask the same question over and over and over again, usually when I was on deadline. You worried a lot during that time about where your wallet was. Where's my wallet? You might ask that 8 times in a trip to the drugstore up the street. One time, I got a call from Kate, who had recently been staying in Albany, and she was back in Ithaca. "Where's Mom's wallet?" she said. I go, "Very funny." She goes, "No, I have it." And we burst out laughing. She had somehow walked off with Mom's wallet. And she ended up FedExing it back the next day, and we never told you about it until now, Mom. And the wallet, by the way, is with her. It's right next to you. You won't lose it anymore. But I have to admit, I did keep the magic credit card that was inside. Bad as it was, as I say, dementia did not completely empty you, Mom. You still could unleash that sharp wit and very quick sarcasm. For years, I regaled my Facebook followers with her one-liners. And even when it got hard for you to speak, you still managed to get out a few good ones. "Mom, what's wrong?" I asked you once when she called out "Ro" at 2:30 in the morning. I had jumped out of bed, run into her room, expecting some kind of disaster. "Mom, what's your problem?" "No problem, just you," she told me. And you just had to laugh. Last month, sisters Joanne and Kippy and Kate went in to see Mom, and they posed a question that we have spent a lifetime trying to answer. Literally on her deathbed, they said, "You can reveal it now, Mom. Who's your favorite daughter?" And once again, without missing a beat, she just said, "Oh, I haven't had her yet." Okay, cool, I'm getting to the end. As I told you, I considered my mother a better writer. She was very good. And that explains why I'm about to plagiarize here what she said at her father's funeral in 1989. She eulogized him. And don't you dare cry until I get through this. If my wildest dreams come true, you have just gone ahead of the rest of us, and the same way that you arrived here on Earth before any of us, and that eventually we will be reunited as a family. And then again, Mom said, perhaps your immortality lies in these memories of you that will never die. Okay, now you can cry. Let's go on, Jess.
Lord, I am not worthy. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Only say the word, only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. Gathered at the altar of our God and King, we present ourselves. We are wounded sinners in need of grace. You restore our health. Lord, I am not worthy. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Only say the word, only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. You look upon yourself, our humanity. You humbled yourself. You give us a share in your divinity. In you we find our help. Lord, I am not worthy. Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof. Only say the word, only say the word, and my soul shall be healed, and my soul shall be healed.
Okay, I want to make sure everybody can hear me. So, for those of you who don't know, is Theresa Armao. I'm Cisco, Ah's oldest grandson, and this is my cousin Jessica, Ah's only granddaughter. We are here representing all of the grandchildren, Guy Michael, Simon, Zachary, Marco, Ian, and Kevin. As I got older, her reaction to technological nuisances, no matter how big or small, was the same. Dismay that the world was passing her by, technology making the mundane overly complicated, and her being left behind. She'd lay it on. Oh, to hell with it. Jesus, take me. One evening in the 2010s, I was in town for a bike race. I was cooking on the stovetop, and I sat at the round table in the center of her kitchen, cleaning a bike part or looking at my phone. I don't remember what we were talking about. With it didn't matter. She was just fun to talk to. Suddenly, a beeping starts. I barely notice, but starts screaming and hitting buttons on anything plugged in to make it stop. I stroll over and press stop on the timer on the microwave. The silence is short. Screams, Jesus Christ, I've lived too long, to hell with it all. Lord, just take me. I let her finish, and then matching her intensity yelled, Jesus Christ, it's a microwave. The technology is 50 years old. We both erupted into laughter.
Making Al laugh was great. She gave you one of those big laughs that was all teeth and loud. If she was sitting, she'd lean back as it came out. She was fun to talk to and funny, that I remember, and sad sometimes. She was hard on herself, mostly in comparison. If you complimented her meatballs, she would say her mother Annie was a better cook. If you were lucky and received a copy of her quarterly family newsletter, Our Days, which is in the back, you couldn't mention what a great writer she was without her responding that her daughters were far better. Tell her that she had been a stunner. We've all seen the old swimsuit pics of her and Babs, and she'd mention that her husband Guy was way out of her league. We wish she saw that we all saw in her, that to us, was an A-list movie star. Growing up in her orbit, you got into Salado and Armao and Scourge family unions at the Pocket Park. A guaranteed $100 check and a card on your birthday well into your 20s. A +1 at all graduations, a love of petting zoos, the Catskill Game Farm in particular. Christmas stockings filled with batteries, razor blades, pantyhose for me. And the newest quarter for your coin collection. A copy of the aforementioned newsletter. A place to spend summer months you look back on as your best. They're usually a belt size bigger. Truly useful care packages during your college years. A swimming pool in the summertime. Eggs, bacon, and toast every morning while you read the Times Union at the table, waiting for the coffee that took forever to make on the stovetop. It didn't get you a ticket to the annual cookie party, though. That was always a tough score. Such a large part of our world is Oswald, and for that we are so very grateful.
It's wonderful to see all of the familiar faces celebrating her important life. Many of you walked through her back door, up those steps, and into that kitchen where she reigned supreme for so many decades. For a time, I was in my mid-30s and I was well into her 80s. I got to spend most weekends with her. I'd drive up from the city where I lived on Friday night and stay till Sunday. In the morning, she'd make eggs while I read that Times Union. She'd feed my wheelchair-bound French bulldog Pablo bacon under the kitchen table, no matter how many times I tell her not to. When the weekend was over, poor Pablo's belly would drag on the ground beside his wheels. He didn't care. He loved and bacon. At night, we'd hit the barn cider. I loved steaks at the barn cider with She always paid. One night, after a few drinks, I asked her to rank the most important news events of her lifetime. Her number one was VE Day, which stands for Victory in Europe Day, or the day Germany surrendered. She told me that she, hand in hand with her two besties, Aunt Ro and Babs from the swimsuit picture, walked from Sand Creek Road to downtown Albany, all the streets full with celebrations. When I think now of how I want to remember there are so many options. Holding court in that kitchen, walking up the spiral staircase to the crown of the Statue of Liberty, standing on the slope of her driveway waving as your car pulled away after a visit, sitting with her feet in the pool as she stared at nothing contentedly. But I think the one I want to remember most is that one I never met, that 19-year-old girl enjoying the news event of her life with her two closest friends. That girl who had no idea what was to come, how big her family would be, and how many of you in here she would touch. In closing, from all of us here in attendance, you will always be numero uno.
How's that for an intro? Introduce yourself. We all know.
I also have notes. I was honored when I was asked to share some memories. And mine are probably included in a lot of what Rosemary said. But I appreciate the opportunity to share those with you. Everybody remembers or knows what a pet person Theresa was. Loved all pets. Treated them like they were not treated at home most of the time. We know how much she cherished the cats in recently, providing her comfort and entertainment. But back in the 70s, it was all about a puppy she named Maximilian. Now, Maximilian was also a sister, a brother of the dog that I adopted, Maxine. Theresa insisted that I call this dog Maxine because they both needed to be Maxes for some reason. These puppies were being given away to a good family. A guy that I worked with needed to place these puppies. And I looked at him and I thought, I'm definitely taking one of these. And I thought, easy touch. Theresa Armao is going to take one. She didn't know she was going to take one. So I talked to her about it and showed her a picture. Oh, they're cute, but I don't want a big dog. I said, they're not going to get big. It's only about this big, not big at all. 40 pounds tops. She thought about it, thought hard about it. She was still on the fence when I went to pick the puppies up. I was convinced she was going to take it. So I pulled into the driveway, 173 Sand Creek Road, with a cardboard box on the passenger seat of the car and these 2 fluff balls in that box. And she came out and looked at it and said, all right, I'll take that one. It's not going to be big, is it? I said, no. Not big at all. Not at all. And then they started to grow. And I would go visit, and she said, you said they weren't going to be that big. I said, they're not. Only this. And every time I visited, that Max had grown at least 2 inches. Got to be the biggest dog, a lot bigger than I thought. One day she looked at me, at 6 months old. I went to visit. I said, that's as big as he's going to get. He's not going to get any bigger than that. Well, Max didn't get the note about that because he just kept on growing. Finally, she said to me one day, you really don't have a clue, do you? I said, you were right, Theresa. I had no idea. No idea. But Max was a lot of fun for her. Max went everywhere with her. And we celebrated the Max's birthdays together, which Maxine, my dog, really loved because Maximilian's father was a butcher. And he would bring home steaks, and we would have steaks at this picnic. Max and Max would have steak at the picnic. The kids got hamburgers. But Max and Max, I can still see them running around the yard with those bones in their mouth. And Theresa was just laughing like crazy, but they really enjoyed Maximilian. Another memory goes back to her driving. She was taking driving lessons, and I happened to be around, and she said, I need some help on parallel parking. And I thought, okay, we can do this. So I said, okay, I can help you. She was taking lessons, so I figured, just a little brush up. So I went over, picked her up. Well, she was going to drive her car. Max jumps in the back seat, and off we go down Sand Creek Road to the Sand Creek Junior High School, I guess it was at that time, where I was convinced I was going to be able to hone her skills on parallel parking. So she said, do you want me to drive to? I said, yeah, you're taking lessons, you drive. She was hugging the shoulder of the road, and I kept saying, you might want to move over a little bit. Well, what's a shoulder for if you can't drive? Okay. So we hobbled along up that mile or so to the school parking lot. And she pulled in, and as she was pulling in, she was slowing down. Max jumped right out the window and tore ass across the parking lot, which was exactly what I felt like doing about a half mile down the road. So I had this idea that I was going to put traffic cones, a car length apart, and she was going to learn how to work with these traffic cones. So we got it all set up, talked a little bit about, the technique, and I got out and stood on the sidewalk. Well, she tried the first time. Oh boy. And she tried the second time. And about the third or fourth time, I could see she was getting frustrated, so I went in and I said, here's some tips on how you might. I'm trying the best I can. Okay. So I said, try again. So we did this 7 or 8 times. Finally, she did one that was close. And she gets out of the car and she looks. She said, "I think I got it." I smiled. I said, "Okay." I picked up my flattened traffic cones, threw them in the back of the trunk, and said, I said to myself, "I think this is going to take professional help." And off we went. She said, "But why don't you drive home? I'm a little tired." And I said, "Okay, I'll drive home." The fact of the matter was, it was a left-hand turn coming out of that park. She said, "You want to make that left-hand turn." Somewhere along the way, I also got selected to be the social director. I said, "Okay." And the key focus at this discussion was, winter's coming and we have to have something to do during the winter. I think bowling would be good. Why don't you organize that? I said, "Okay." How did I get this esteemed job of social director? Don't let it go to your head. You got a car and you know how to drive. Okay. So we decided, okay, we'll do bowling on Sunday nights. And we established this bowling league, which consisted of Theresa and Babs, my mother, my sister Theresa for comic relief, Aunt Joe Levito, who actually was, of all of us, the best bowler. And we would meet on Sunday nights. My job was to make sure we had lanes reserved and everybody had shoes and a way to get there. And none of us knew how to bowl. And I figured out early on, this wasn't about bowling, because my other job was to be sure there was something following the bowling that included eating and drinking. Okay? On Sunday night, school night. So we would do the bowling, and then they decided, well, we should collect dues every week so we could have a bowling banquet. Okay, so we did that, certainly. And we did this all winter long and had a really good time. And then it came time to organize the bowling banquet, and so we had to have a meeting about where we would go. And for some reason, we ended up in Lake George at some fancy restaurant they all wanted to visit. I'm not sure where this party got off track, but some of them got overserved. There was dancing and singing. It got pretty ugly. Another one of our trips after our bowling was to one of the cousins had a bar they were opening. I think it was Butch Scaringe. Is that maybe right?
Or was it Paul?
Excuse me?
Was it Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a tavern anyway.
One of those strange kinds.
Yeah, I think it was Butch. Anyway, they wanted to go and visit. It was the right thing to do. He was a nephew, after all. So I said, okay. So off we went. Packed in the back seat of my car were Aunt Joe, Babs, Theresa, and my mother. Okay, and my sister Theresa in the passenger seat. And we headed off. We found it. And again, some people were overserved. I purposely didn't drink because I knew this party was going to get out of control. So, time to go home, pack everybody back in the car, starting down the road. Theresa Armao, "Aunt Joe, sing a song for us." Okay, so off we go singing "Shine On Harvest Moon" at the top of our lungs with Theresa Armao and my mother and Babs singing backup. It was quite distracting. Going down the road, I look in the rearview mirror, and there are red lights. Oh boy. So I pull over, he gets out, he comes over, and I roll the window down, and he said, one of your lights is out. Next thing I know, window in the back seat's going down, and Theresa Armao says, "Is that important enough to scare us to death?" It's pitch black out. Yeah, he thought it was important. He looked in the back. Theresa says to him, "She has not been drinking." He says, "Not about drinking. The back light is out." Okay. He looked at them again, looked at me and said, well, go ahead and take them home. Good idea. Other trips, probably the first one that we actually flew somewhere was to Las Vegas. They wanted to go to Las Vegas, but the church had a group going, and they wanted to go. So I said, okay, we'll go to Las Vegas. But it was just, I don't know, it was just Theresa and my mother and me. Pops didn't go with us. And we were having a good time all day long. Got to be really late, spending all that time in the casino. And I said, I'm going to bed. And they were like, they were just mortified that I was going to bed. And they said, well, somebody told us about Circus. I said, okay, bye. So I went to bed. They went off to see something at Circus. I don't know why I felt safe letting them go by themselves, but they did. 4 o'clock in the morning, they come back, and they're pounding on the door because neither one of them brought a key, pounding on the door. And they're looking at me like I'm the crazy one, and said, you missed a great show. They had dancing dogs, and the two of them are dancing around the room at 4 o'clock in the morning. Go to bed, people. They busted my chops about that a long time because this young girl was in bed while they were partying. I have the same childhood memories. Picnics at Browns Beach on Wednesdays, backyard holiday picnics, the cutthroat badminton games, Michigan rummy after our tap dancing lessons at the Jonah One School of Dance. She always made sure we had tutus for the recitals. Do you remember that? You probably don't remember that. I agree. But my biggest, probably most important memory, I would say, is when my father passed away. And unexpectedly, leaving my inconsolable mother, my sister who was 13 months pregnant, I think, my other sister that I had just bailed out of the hospital that morning, and my traumatized 14-year-old brother, and me, trying to figure out what this change in my life was about. It was an ice storm, and I worked off all my energy trying to shovel the ice out of the driveway and thinking I was going to find solace in that somehow. And Father Starks pulls up thinking, oh, this probably helped me feel better. He gets out of the car and he looks at me and he says, it's cold out here, don't stay out here too long. I thought, well, that's really helpful. And the next thing I knew, I was driving into the driveway at 173 St. Creek Road. And she saw me coming in the driveway. She met me out in the parking area. Freezing cold, not a sweater. She probably even had her Zorries on still. She just opened her arms and I collapsed in a heap, sobbing my eyes out. Not a word was exchanged. They say that you remember people for how they made you feel. Not what they did or what you did together, but how they made you feel at any given time. And that is the memory that I hold deep in my heart from Theresa Armao.
Hi, I'm Joanne Armao. I'm Theresa's second daughter. There are, as you know, 5 of us. Rosemary, Joanne, Kate. I remembered you this time, Kate. Lisa, and Christine, also known as Kippy. This room is filled with people who knew and loved Theresa Armao. Her daughters, her sons-in-laws, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, cousins, nephews, nieces, and neighbors. So no matter how engaging or entertaining it is to hear others talk about what Theresa Armao meant, what is important, what she would want, is for everyone to remember what she meant to them, to hold on to their own personal memories of this remarkable, unique woman. Maybe it was a passage she wrote about your family in her newsletters, or family reunion she single-handedly arranged, or a note she wrote to comfort you in a difficult time, or the box of white trash you like to whip up for friends. My sisters and I remember our mother as a funny, engaged, strong, but complicated woman. And those memories, along with yours, will keep her alive. Thank you all for coming. It would have meant the world to her. Please feel welcome to join us at Our Lady of Angels Cemetery for interment, and then at 3:30 at the Italian American Community Center on 257 Washington Avenue Extension to celebrate our mother's well-lived life. Thank you.
Oh God, we've gathered in this place in sorrow, seeking your embrace as we return your daughter to ya. Where there's no more suffering or strife, born into new eternal life, we praise you, Father, singing hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Love is patient, love is kind, love is what we leave behind. Love remains with everyone who knew ya. In paradise we pray you'll be met there by friends and family to welcome you with songs of hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah,
This concludes our service here in the funeral home. We will now be making our way to Our Lady of Angels Cemetery, where all are welcome to join. Sarah's in the parking lot. If you'd like to get in line, she'll give you a flag and explain where to get your car parked in line so you can join us. But please have your bright lights and your flashers, and just be careful as we go through stop signs or intersections. At this time, we're going to begin dismissing the chapel. David is going to start on the left side of the room. If you come up the left side, have a quiet moment at the casket, and exit out the rear of the chapel to your vehicles,